I'm Francis. Standing outside the glass-walled boardroom, I watched the chaos unfold. The CEO sat at the head of the table, his face ashen, looking like he was chewing on a bitter pill. Opposite him, the partners from Apex Corp sat with their arms crossed, their skepticism palpable. And there, at the front, was Leo, the new CTO, his face a mask of panic as the screen in front of him turned a violent shade of red. The room was filled with the blaring of a siren, a system alert I'd installed for just such a catastrophic failure. The $500 million merger contract, the very heart of this deal, was now a digital mess. Leo was stammering, trying to explain away the error, but it was clear to everyone that the situation was dire. How did we get here? It all started when Leo walked into the office. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the back of the conference room, sipping on a lukewarm coffee that tasted more like disappointment than anything else. Leo walked in, not bothering to introduce himself to the team. Instead, he started complaining about the ergonomic chairs, saying they lacked lumbar aggression. It was a phrase that made me roll my eyes. Leo was in his early 30s, fresh from a startup that had imploded due to a massive data leak. He came from a wealthy family, his parents being successful businesspeople who had always given him the best of everything. His arrogance was palpable, and he carried himself like he owned the place. He was brought in to facilitate a $500 million merger with Apex Corp. But from my perspective, he was like sand being poured into the well-oiled machine I'd spent 15 years building. I'm a lead product security engineer. I build the digital vaults that protect the company's most sensitive data, its secrets, and its proprietary algorithms. I'm not one for small talk or networking. I focus on my work, and I do it well. Leo started his speech, full of energy and buzzwords. He talked about trimming the fat and migrating to a cloud-native serverless architecture. He dismissed the legacy code as bloated and old-fashioned, not realizing that in my world, legacy meant battle-tested. My code had survived countless cyber attacks and server failures. He then turned his attention to me. Francis, he said, pointing a manicured finger at me, you're in charge of internal protocol security. That sounds like a fancy way of saying a cost center. I kept my cool, setting my coffee cup down slowly. It's encryption, Leo. I secure the data transfer tunnels. Without them, the merger documents are just open books on the internet. He laughed, a short, derisive bark. Encryption? AWS can handle that. We don't need your custom scripts. I knew arguing with him would be fruitless. He was too set in his ways, too eager to prove himself. So, I decided to play the long game. A few days later, I got a ping on Slack from Tom, a junior developer. Francis, did you see Leo revoked our access to the main repo? He wants to approve all commits personally. I checked my terminal, and sure enough, I was locked out. It was like he'd taken the keys to my house and given them to someone who didn't know how to use them. But instead of panicking, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I opened a separate terminal window and typed in a command I hadn't used in years, get clone mirror. I cloned the entire repository, including all the history, branches, and most importantly, the encryption logic hidden in directories Leo didn't even know existed. Leo then came to my cubicle, trying to seem friendly. We need to talk about your attitude in the meeting, he said, smoothing his tie. I know change is hard, but I need team players. I looked up at him, my face blank. I understand, Leo. You want efficiency and modernization. He beamed, thinking he'd won me over. Great. I'll need the documentation for your encryption protocols. I'm bringing in a consulting firm to rewrite it in Rust. I lied and said I'd compile the docs for him. Once he left, I moved the cloned repository onto a heavily encrypted, ruggedized USB drive. I initiated a script to scrub the logs of the download. I wasn't stealing the company's property, I was protecting it. Or maybe I was preparing for revenge. The next morning, A shared Google Sheet titled Project Zero Redundancy Elimination was projected on the big monitors in the engineering bay. It was a kill list. Tom was beside me, looking like he was about to be sick. "He's deleting the load balancers," he whispered. I scanned the list and stopped at a particular entry. It was my core synthesis project, marked for immediate purge. The reason? Obfuscated logic, lacks documentation, non-standard file extension, looks like junk data. I walked into the glass-walled room where Leo was holding court with his new team. 3 young guys in trendy vests, looking like they'd just stepped out of a tech startup brochure. "Leo," I said, "you have the core synthesis project marked for purge." He leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. "It's spaghetti code, Francis. We're replacing it with a standard AES 256 library." I tried to explain that it was the key generator, that it linked the timestamps of the merger contracts to the digital signatures. If deleted, the documents would lock down permanently. But he wouldn't listen. He thought I was just clinging to the past. I decided to play along. "Okay," I said. "You're the CTO. If you say it's junk, it's junk." He relaxed, thinking he'd won. But I knew better. I told Tom that the version on the server was just a shell, and the real logic was safely stored on my USB drive. 2 days later, it was time for the alpha demo. The war room was packed with executives and board members. Leo was sweating through his bespoke shirt as he tried to show off his Vortal, a new system he claimed would revolutionize the merger platform. On the screen, a slick interface appeared. He dragged a dummy merger contract into the upload box, and a green check mark appeared instantly. "Zero latency," he boasted. But I could tell it was all a sham. There was no real encryption, no proper key exchange. When one of the Apex executives asked about the historical archive, Leo lied through his teeth. "Fully integrated," he said. But when he clicked on a file in the archive, it wouldn't open. A loading spinner appeared and spun, and then a generic placeholder image of a document showed up. Leo tried to blame it on Wi-Fi lag, but I knew the truth. The key generator was gone, and without it, the documents were encrypted beyond recovery. The next day, Sarah from compliance came to my cubicle. She was a nervous woman, always terrified of deviating from protocol. She held the merger agreement like it was a sacred text. "Francis," she said, her voice trembling, "I can't find the reference to the dual-chained signatures in the new system. If we don't have them, the merger funds won't clear." I explained to her that the logic for those signatures lived in the core synthesis project, the one Leo had marked as junk. She was in a panic, begging me to fix it. But I told her I couldn't. My access had been revoked, and if I touched the repository, I'd be fired. As the situation worsened, an auditor from the acquiring bank showed up. He was having trouble verifying the system integrity. Leo demanded that I fix it, but I couldn't give him a file generated by a system he'd flagged for deletion. In a fit of rage, Leo fired me. I took my purse and the USB drive in my pocket and walked out of the office. I knew that when he tried to fix the problem by deleting the corrupted cache, he'd trigger the fail-safe I'd engineered years ago. Back at home, I sat on my porch, sipping wine as my cat, Luna, wound herself around my ankles. My phone was buzzing with missed calls and texts. Tom's text said, "OMG." He deleted it. "Everything is red." I knew the company was in a bind. Leo was desperate, leaving voicemails asking me to come back and clarify some variable names. But he still didn't understand. He thought it was a negotiation, that he could buy his way out of this mess. The next morning, a courier brought me a consulting contract. The rate was $500 an hour, but I shredded it. I wasn't going to give in so easily. I drove back to the office. The reception area was eerily quiet. I took the elevator to the 40th floor and stood outside the boardroom. I watched as Leo tried to open the merger contract one last time. The screen turned black, and a fatal error message appeared, Keychain lost. Merger package corrupted. Recovery impossible. The room fell silent. Leo was in shock, his ego shattered. The CEO and the Apex partners were in a panic. I walked into the room, and all eyes turned to me. "You're the one who removed the key generator," I said calmly. "You thought it was junk, but it was the heart of our security system." Leo pointed a shaking finger at me, accusing me of sabotage. But I stood my ground. The CEO begged me to plug in the USB drive. "We'll reinstate you. We'll double your salary," he said. But I looked at Leo, broken and defeated. The code was the lock, but the product was the people who knew how to turn the key. "You fired the product." I turned and walked out of the room. The security guard, who'd been loyal to me, held the elevator door open. "Have a good one, Francis," he said. As I walked out of the building into the sunlight, my phone buzzed with a text from the CEO, "Name your price." "Anything, please." I didn't reply. I knew I'd give them the key eventually, but not today and not for free. The legacy might be gone, but I, the engineer, was just getting started.